We've looked at stratigraphy and relative dating and tested on using radiocarbon to date levels in a stratigraphic sequence. Here's an example from northwestern Wyoming with a series of radiocarbon levels spanning over 10,000 years. The levels get older the deeper into the deposit. Artifacts recorded in these dated levels show change through time. Analysis of sites like this provides the basis for using artifact shape and size to estimate ages of artifacts found elsewhere. It's this combination of many radiocarbon dates, stratigraphy, and artifact types that is the basis of the development of this timeline of Wyoming archaeology. Without getting into detail, the timeline can be divided into three broad groupings: the older Paleo-Indian with large on-notched points, the archaic with notched atlatl dart points, and the late period when the bow and arrow begins to be used. Although there are many measurements that could be taken, here are 13 we have been using recently. Rachel Reckon's work with points such as these from dated contexts has been used to allow her to create this key for doing a quick estimate of point age. Okay, we've got 2 points here that are roughly the same in terms of outline. Both are side-notched, slightly concave base points. A big difference you can see right off is one is markedly larger than the other. And that size is in part a result of the technology that was used to deliver these points from the human hunter into the prey animal. And one of the attributes that helps us distinguish that technology is what we call neck width. And neck width is the distance between the notches on a point like this. It's basically the size of what the haft would have been. If it were an arrow, you can envision an arrow shaft on it, something like that. If it were this piece, you can see that the haft would have been larger than this pencil. So the neck width is the distance between those 2 points. And it's an approximation of the haft, the spear, dart, or arrow shaft that went onto it. So on this larger one here, we have a neck width of 12.6 millimeters. On this smaller one, we have a neck width of 10.3 millimeters. As we'll talk about a little bit later in this video, one of the ways that you can distinguish between a dart point, which is older, and an arrow point, which is later, is this neck width there. Coupled with neck thickness, the distance across a point like that, or across a point like that, you've got a fairly good indicator that most of the time can tell you whether you've got a dart point or an arrow point. With the distance here, if it's less than about 11 millimeters, and this is 10.2, and if this thickness is less than about 4 millimeters, and this is about 2.9, you've more than likely got an arrow point. So in collecting information on points, there are a number of standard measurements that we often take. I'm going to run through these relatively quickly. And one of the things that makes it fairly easy to collect data on points quickly are these electric calipers connected to my laptop here. I put the calipers on the artifact I want to measure, push this button, and the measurement's recorded into a spreadsheet on the computer. So I don't need to waste time putting them down, picking up the pencil, do that sort of stuff. So we'll run through the list of standard measurements that we'll be using on the projectile points, the dart and arrow points we'll be talking about here. So a first measurement is an axial length or total length, which is the length from the base to the tip of the point. Obviously, you can only take this where you've got complete specimens. If the tip's broken off, if the base is broken off, you can't take that one. So that's our axial length measurement. Next, we take 2 blade length measurements, which, as the name implies, is the length of a blade. From, in this case, it's the notch to the tip. That's blade length 1. And then there's a blade length 2 measure that we take. Then we take a notch depth measurement on each of these notches, how deep that notch is into the edge of the piece. Then we take a notch depth 2 measurement. And on some points, especially later points, there's sometimes a third notch down there on the base. This one doesn't have a third notch, so we're not taking our ND3 measurement. Then we take shoulder to corner measurement 1, shoulder to corner measurement 2. Then we take that neck width measurement that we've talked about. Then we take a haft height measurement, is that one right there. Then we take a neck height measurement, which is that one right there. Then we take a base width measurement, which is that one right there. And then we take a blade width measurement, which is that one right there. And once we've done that, we're pretty much all done with measuring that single projectile point. We move on to the next one. These are examples of some of the points of about the same age recorded from 2 sites. The location of an item, where it is on the site, is very important. We also record the description of the item. In this case, who recorded it, what it is, a chipped stone, it's a projectile point, it's proximal, it's made of Morrison quartzite, it's not heated, it has no cortex. Then we talk about shape. This one is a corner notched with a convex base with straight blades, lenticular cross-section. Then we talk about additional modification. There is basal grinding, there is stem grinding, there's no resharpening, there's an impact fracture. Then we describe color. Then we describe basic measurements, length, width, thickness, and weight. Finally, we go through all the point-specific measurements that we just showed. Although these data can be used to look at a number of attributes of manufacturing use of the points, in this video we're only going to be talking about one, whether it seems to have been used as a bow and arrow point or a dart point, thrown by a bow or thrown by an atlatl, and roughly whether it was over or under about 2,000 years old. The more recent technology, the bow and arrow, is fairly familiar to us, but here's an example of bow and arrow use to sort of refresh our minds in thinking about it. This group of hunters still use bow and arrows in their daily activities. We talked about the older technology, the atlatl, the throwing stick, in an earlier video. Returning to the sequence at 48 PA 201. Some of the points from the 3 upper levels spanning the last 2,000 years are shown here. The difference in size, particularly neck width, of larger points from level 34 and those from levels 36 and 38 indicates the appearance of bow and arrow use in the sequence. This transition in points marks a key change in technology and prompts lots of research questions. So with this quick introduction, you should be able to begin to recognize, even in a jumble of points like those shown here, which points are most likely to be the older dart points and which are probably more recent arrow points. You're beginning to learn to tell time.